Trigun has always been one of my favorite old school anime series that I watched growing up. Staying up all night, watching it on Adult Swim at 1 in the morning, hearing that guitar music intro, and being captivated by the sci-fi western aesthetics and the character of Vash the Stampede wandering the wastelands in search of his brother while simultaneously getting himself caught within the conflicts of others. And even though he's fast as lightning, an expert gunman, and has the power to wipe out everybody around him without much effort at all, he still holds true to that sense of pacifism, trying to see the best in humanity despite not really being one of them at all, and preaching his message of, well, love and peace. But I was always told that the manga of Trigun was so much better and that it deviated quite a bit from the 26 episode series, and so I had always meant to check it out, and now I finally have. Trigun, the manga, and Trigun Maximum were written by Yasuhiro Naito and ran from 1995 to 2007, and for anybody curious, Trigun Maximum is simply just the continuation of Trigun. It had to change names when it switched publications, but there's no difference in the story. So in order to read in order, you would just read Trigun, which is 3 volumes, and then you would continue with Trigun Maximum, which is 14 volumes. Trigun takes place in a fictional world not even on planet Earth, but another planet entirely that's inhabited by only a few survivors of a massive starship cataclysm that have managed to build and create functioning towns with the help of weird man-made technology called plants that is able to give them the resources they need, though they are working with the bare minimum, and nobody left from the cataclysm really even understands how they work. But the world is set up in a western aesthetic, mostly all desert, filled with small towns and a seemingly never-ending wave of outlaws, bandits, and criminals trying to have their way of everything. In some ways, it does kind of remind me of Fist of the North Star, where even though the world isn't post-apocalyptic in a traditional sense, it definitely feels very similar, and Vash being that wandering hero archetype, except the perception of Vash is the total opposite of Kenshiro, because Vash is known as the humanoid typhoon and has a bounty of $60 billion on his head for the fact that devastation seems to follow him wherever he goes, including an incident that wiped an entire city off the map. So at first, Trigun is very Western driven. It has shootouts and showdowns and all that kind of stuff, but as the series goes on, it becomes much more science fiction, to where that side of the story becomes more prominent, and in the manga, it virtually takes over the entire thing by the second half. We still get all of the anime characters in the manga. We have Millie and Meryl, who are definitely important in the manga, but I did feel like they had a lot less to do here than they did in the anime, at least as far as their impact goes, as well as their standout moments. They are still there for the entire stretch, but they were definitely more supporting characters in the manga. A hugely important character in both the anime and manga is Nicholas D. Wolfwood, a so-called traveling priest carrying a giant cross called the Punisher that is filled with guns. Yeah, not so slight of a reference there. But he is far and away my favorite character of the series in both the show and the manga. Not only is he a certified badass, a little goofy at times, and his ideology completely clashes with Vash, as he's certainly willing to pull the trigger on an enemy that crosses his path. But his backstory is elaborated on much more here, and even with strong associations to villainous characters, you do understand where he's coming from every step of the way, and wouldn't blame him for becoming a hero or villain, as the line for him is so incredibly thin. There's also a segment of the manga where, after a big event, Wolfwood is the one to find Vash and help get him back on his feet, and for a number of chapters, it's just the two of them traveling together. Their dynamic and interactions and opposing views was really the highlight of the series for me, and regardless of how small it was probably my favorite portion. Things really ramp up when they introduce the villains. We get Legato and a variety of assassins that come looking for Vash, each with their own unique abilities and personalities, all leading up to an inevitable confrontation, or really multiple confrontations, between Vash and his twin brother, Knives, who is just as, if not more powerful than Vash himself is, and much more malicious as well. They are two sides of the same coin basically, with their origins being directly tied in to the event that led all the humans who have crash landed on this planet, and if it were up to Knives, there would be no humans left at all. Knives sees humanity as this parasitic entity that are unworthy of the powers that the plants possess, of which you find out early on Vash and Knives are. Knives isn't some super evil being for the sake of being evil, he genuinely believes that he's doing what's right by his kind, and that's what makes it feel pretty tragic. They both come from the same origins and have the same trauma, discovering that they themselves were plants and the horrible experiments that were done to one of the plants that came before them, and how humanity now relies on them to survive. Both of them came from the ship that was carrying humanity to find other planets to continue living on, and they both have the same mentor and mother-like figure named Rem, who basically raised them. Knives took the pain of his discovery and directs it inwards towards himself, whereas Vash kind of buries it under this aloof attitude and his vow to keep Rem's memory alive. Neither of them have really healed from this event in all of these years later, they just went in different directions. Vash chooses compassion, even when it seems like the worst thing you could do, and Knives is desperate to hold on to some kind of control. So these two are forever on a collision course towards each other, and when it's found out that Earth has finally contacted this planet and are on their way to help, Knives immediately shuts that down and prepares for his final attacks. Now, the second half of the manga, though it deviates a lot from the anime, mostly that's because it's just filled to the brim with battle after battle after battle, and to be honest, it did get a little exhausting, and some of the artwork, though great, when it comes to full-page spreads and character layouts and all of that, but depicting the action sequences can be very hard to follow, and a lot of the times I couldn't really tell what was going on. Especially when a lot of the villains have some of the most bizarre and wacky designs and abilities that it's trying to depict. But this is yet another reason why I wish we got a solid anime adaptation that follows the manga, because all of this could feel much more coherent if I was watching it as a fluid motion instead of trying to read it on a page. I think its only real issue is that it keeps creating villain after villain after villain. I feel like if you kept the villains a little smaller, a little more focused, it would have worked better for me. On the positive side though, the ultimate final battles of the manga, unlike the anime, really do feel like they are apocalyptic. They feel huge and even spiritual in a way. The transformations of Knives and Vash and what they undergo are a lot more elaborate and ethereal than just a giant arm cannon like we see in the anime, and Knives basically looks like straight up an angel of death, which is a role that he fits perfectly comfortable into. The tragic thing about Vash and Knives is that you can tell that they do care about each other, each in their own way, even if they can't admit it, and that Knives is so desperate to prove something to Vash, and Vash is really so desperate to save his brother, so neither of them ultimately want to defeat one another at the end of the day. At least that's not what I felt. They both had their point to prove, but neither side will listen. Now, there is a part of me that enjoys the more simplistic and shorter version of Trigun in anime form. I'm always going to love that version the best, but allowing the series to get so tension-filled and apocalyptic as the manga does is an angle that works incredibly well, and it's a damn shame that we weren't able to see this fully realized in an anime, especially with that classic 90s art style. But I do have to say that if you love the 90s anime and you are just a fan of sci-fi, western, cyberpunk style series in general, especially ones with lots of action and incredibly likable characters, then I would definitely recommend doing yourself a favor and dipping back into the past a little bit to see a version of the future that was Trigun. Really, I did enjoy this quite a bit, and although I don't think it was perfect, it was definitely a fun ride to get through, and gave me a lot more than the anime ever did. I know right now they have released Trigun in the deluxe editions, so that may be the best way to get your hands on them physically. But either way, this is a wonderfully fun series that I would recommend checking out, and it does make me nostalgic for those late nights of watching the anime for the very first time. So if you guys have read the Trigun manga, let me know what you think about it down below. Leave all your thoughts, comments, opinions. Tell me what you think about Vash the Stampede, and most particularly his relationship with knives. Thanks as always for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Give the video a like and comment to help it out in the algorithm. And if you want to help the channel on a deeper level, I do have Patreon channel memberships and all the social media links where you can follow me down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you next time.